Hello again. This is Keith Parsons with Heavy Wireless, a podcast that's part of the Packet Pushers podcast network. And today I've got Drew Lentz with me. Drew, how are you doing?
What's up, Keith? It's good to see you, man.
Yeah, we saw each other last week. We were at the Wi-Fi World Congress in Sarasota, Florida.
Yeah.
And
what a beautiful place, huh?
Yeah,
Sarasota, of all the places in the world, Sarasota, what a fun pick, you know?
Other than, I'm a mountain guy, and it's so flat.
It was so green, though. That's what I couldn't get over it. I was staying a little bit further away than where the hotel was, so I had this really cool Uber ride every morning, and we were in the middle of a jungle. I mean, it was so insane, but so beautiful, so beautiful.
You live in West Texas. What do you expect?
South Texas is even worse.
Even worse.
Yeah.
Well, I thought we could get together today and we could talk about our experiences at Wi-Fi Now. And I'll give my top 5 and you can give your top 5, and we can kind of talk through the kind of amazing, the things that we saw at the conference.
Yeah. Awesome.
Great. Well, I'll start with my first one. And I used to be involved heavily in MDUs, multi-dwelling units, putting in Wi-Fi. In fact, that's kind of where I started a long time ago in Wi-Fi. And there was this trouble that we got into because customers thought it was a cheap solution, and they went for outside in, as in we have a big multi, apartment complex. And if we just put some APs on the outside and we punch through the outside walls, we'll take care of everyone on the inside. And it just, outside in just doesn't work. We need inside out. And
Absolutely.
there was a company, Dojo Networks. Dan Myers from there gave a presentation, and he's been at this starting in his company, I think 10, 15 years ago, and has kind of captured the model that works, an MDU system that works. And I don't know, were you able to catch Dan's presentation?
I did. Yeah. It was great to see that he started with how he was an internet service provider. He started with doing wireless ISP stuff, and then he moved from the outside in. He did also bring a Lamborghini that was parked in front of the hotel. And I kept wondering if that was going to be a raffle prize. Unfortunately, it was not. But it was neat to see the evolution of what he had done and how he had moved from wireless internet service provider, and they got opportunities to work in MDUs, and then working in those MDUs. It was really neat to see what was going on. And I don't, everything's been tried, and we've had the hallway discussion, we've had the outside in discussion, and it always ends up, the closer you can get the access point to the client, the better it's going to work, and it's like, I always go back to the light bulb reference of, if you're trying to get light into a room, why would you put the light in the hallway? Or why would you shoot the light through the window? Why not put the light in the actual room? So,
and just because you could put a searchlight on the outside of a house and beam it in the house, you could see through a couple windows, it would light the house up, but there's a lot of dark corners.
Yeah, there sure are. But he had a good presentation, and Dojo's got they've got a lot of clients out there. That was really neat to see that it wasn't just Dan from Dojo that was there. There was a great representation from MDU people. I mean, the group from Pavlov was there, and they've got a huge segment in MDU. Single Digits was there, and they've got a huge presence in MDU as well. So knowing that everyone was there, it was great to see on the first day. It was so much more residential focused, if you will, on how they're solving problems for people like you and I at home, not in the workplace, but at home. And knowing that there was that much emphasis put on what the industry is doing to help those home users, I thought that was really cool, because you don't see that, right? The shows we go to, it's all enterprise, IoT, technology, warehousing and industrial. It was great to see people addressing the home market. And I was not expecting it. I was like, what are these people talking about? We've got we've got some business to do. But then as I leaned in, then I leaned into it.
But when you start talking MDU, it becomes back in the enterprise play. You have co-channel interference that's self-induced, that when you own all the Wi-Fi in the building, and there was a big dichotomy between different vendors who are doing the MDU. And one of the things Dojo was doing is like, we own it, our gear, our fault. If anything breaks, it's us. And then we'll just provide it as an amenity into the building. And I like the thought that, if you're in a apartment, and a lot of us start our lives living in apartments, and some of us, I used to manage apartments. So it's just an amenity. There was a time when a washer dryer was not in the unit. It was down the hall and everyone shared it. And then one way to get a higher rents was you put a washer dryer in each unit and then you got it. I started my career putting telephone lines into MDUs. Well, there's already coax there, but let's manage it. And so one of the things that Dojo does is they manage the Wi-Fi just as a service. Water, electricity, gas, laundry. Wi-Fi is just another amenity, and they're treating it that way.
Thanks for being a Packet Pushers listener. Did you know we've got other IT-related shows you might want to check out, like Heavy Wireless? Heavy Wireless is a deep dive into Wi-Fi, IoT, wireless security, and more. It's hosted by Keith Parsons. He brings decades of experience to conversations with wireless engineers, industry experts, and vendors. So whether you're a WLAN specialist already or looking to expand your skill sets, Heavy Wireless gives you the technical know-how and industry insights to succeed. Find it at packetpushers.net or wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, that was really good to hear, is that it wasn't even that. They talked about not just as the amenity, but as a necessity, like like a necessary amenity. And I mean, you know me, my heartstring always goes into the least connected. And to hear the language that they were using about this is something that you have to have, not something that you want to have or that's great to offer, but these are the things that people are expecting when they move into a property. And if you don't have it, you're just not on par with the rest of some of the groups in the industry. So to hear that language came out just really talked to me, because I want people to continue to look at this and say, this is a service. This is a utility as much as water, electricity, gas, whatever it is. This is something that, you and I, like, here we are. You're in Utah. I'm in South Texas. We're having this conversation. We couldn't even have this conversation if it wasn't for connectivity. You get decent connectivity, at that. So,
well,
it was really cool.
There was the discussion on one of the panels about them upping, the FCC upping what is considered broadband.
Yeah.
Like, not little things anymore. Now they're like, you got minimums 100.
Yeah. I think FCC says 100 down, 20 up. It was great to hear that.
Oh, they just changed it to 100.
Did they push to 100?
Yes.
Oh, God.
I think it's 300 was what the new thing they're shooting for.
Oh, man, I love it. I mean, I'm all for it. I'm all for it, but I'm also for providing some connectivity versus no connectivity.
Yeah.
And to an extent, right? There's the idea that if you don't provide quality connectivity, you're doing a disservice, and you're still creating that digital divide. You're not necessarily closing it. You're just making it more shallow, if you will. But, I live in an area where a lot of our home sites down here, I'm here after a meeting that I had with school districts on how to close the digital divide, because there's so many communities just in my area alone that don't have any connectivity. So if we can give them 50 or 60 megabit per second, is it better to give them that than nothing? And there are people that say, no, it's terrible. Don't give them 50 or 60. That doesn't give them the ability to do anything. And I'm like, I have 50 at home. so, I pay to be below the digital divide, I guess, or, below the threshold, because I understand what I'm capable of using, but I think that I'm glad to see that it's boosting up, and I'm glad to see that the FCC is acknowledging that. I just, I get worried that they're not going to fund networks that don't meet those demands.
And that is kind of where they're headed. They've set a new minimum, but that's for not, because one of the speakers was a for-profit organization, and they're like, we don't rely on the money from the FCC to offset our costs. We rely on providing a service that our customers can pay for.
Yeah.
But the FCC is for those underprivileged people. Let's raise the bars to, like you said, the digital divide, it can't be as deep as it is. So is it better to make it more shallow or not at all? It's a tough call.
It really is a tough call. And I think, I'm going to quote Sam Clements. It depends, right? It depends on what you're trying to do and where you're trying to do it. And if that's a capable service that you can deliver, if you can adequately deliver 50 meg per second, 60 meg per second to a place that has zero connectivity overall, I think that's a good thing, but if it's 50 megabit per second with 40 millisecond latency, that's not necessarily a good thing. So I think it really depends on what you're trying to do and what the problem is you're trying to solve.
Those dang requirements, they come up all the time.
But to go back to what you're saying, though, it's, seeing the changing face of it and seeing people from the MDU market showing up to a conference to talk about what they're doing and how they're doing it. To me, that was such a good signal from that industry that that it was them, and then it was the other gentleman from Global Reach who was talking about the same thing, saying that this is something that they know that they need to have, that they need to provide, and they're looking at it from the end user perspective, not from the service provider's perspective. They're saying, what can I best do to make sure that the people who are staying at my properties or living at my properties are comfortable and confident in the service that they had? To me, that was huge. That's what you want to hear. You don't want to hear the man talking about how much money they can make, their ARPU and all that. What you want to hear is, hey, we have a problem. We know that we need to solve it. That was really cool.
Well, there was
my takeaway.
Talking about the highlights of the show. For me, the lowlights, the bottom.
Oh, I know where you're going with this, because as soon as he got on stage, Keith, I was like, oh God.
Can't handle
this.
Realize that Keith Parsons I am not sitting in the front row to selling internet access and Wi-Fi, and it's a way to make money. There's some people who talked about airports and other public utilities where this is how we can monetize. I'm like, you don't need to monetize anything. You don't. I was sitting next to Dean Bubley at the time, and Dean's the same way. And he's like just shaking because he wants to talk so bad. It's you don't charge extra to go to the toilet. You don't charge extra to get on an elevator or to have a garbage can or to have a clean place. Yep. It's just part of providing a service. And in an airport, I was just on an airport yesterday, and there are those flat people movers, escalators that just stay flat. Mm-hmm. What's the purpose of that other than to make your customers more comfortable? Yeah. And then get to their flights on time. They could walk either way. Why is there so many bathrooms and water filling stations? Every one of those amenities costs money.
That's right.
Having been in the retail industry and the real estate industry before, there's a term that you use for common area maintenance, CAM. So if you rent a building and you have 1,000 square foot little office, a portion of that goes for common area maintenance, which pays for the elevator and the security and all those things. In an airport, yes, there's someone's renting a place for a store, and they pay today a common area maintenance for all those other amenities. And then there was a group going, yeah, but we can charge extra for the Wi-Fi. Well, it's you're already doing it. So anyway. Yes, that's definitely my little hot button. Dean Bubley was next to me. Fernay was on the other side, and we were all just, what are you? Because
I was sitting in the back just laughing because I knew you were like that.
I've yet to meet any customer anywhere who says, I like hitting a captive portal and giving up my information. It's Dean says, next time you go and you're standing in the toilet and you're looking, you have to, before you go to the bathroom, you have to give over your social security number.
Watch this ad open the commode. Yeah.
So anyway, I'll get off that soapbox because, I'm into fast, free, frictionless. It's the friction part that's there. Yep. Well, another person who talked, who I really enjoy, and I met her last year. Her name is Dorothy Stanley. She happens to work for Aruba, but she's been the chair of 80211 committee for, I don't know which, she's done a whole lot of work. But she gave a presentation on all these new letters, B and B. I mean, we were 80211A, B, C, and then we got to AA. We're now at the end of the Bs. So we've gone a long way. But she gave a great presentation talking about each of them and how they're going. And one of my favorites was she talked about HaLow. And in my discussion last week with Tom Carpenter, it was on our last podcast episode, Tom was talking about all the IoT types of wireless that are in the CDMP's wireless, the IoT courseware. And HaLow wasn't there. And we brought it up and he goes, it's not there, and it should be now, but HaLow was just an idea for lots of time. We finally now have Morris Micro coming out and others with chipsets that we could actually use HaLow now.
Oh, have you seen the test results? It's awesome. I mean, it's so encouraging to see what they're doing with it. I hope someone decides that they're going to do a WLPC boot camp on HaLow. Wouldn't that be cool? And that's not at you. You know that. That's for anyone who isn't. If you're listening to this and you're not familiar with Keith and WLPC, what that means is the community is open to jump in and create opportunities to do things. All you have to do is propose it. It would be cool to see someone propose that. Yeah, it's awesome to see what they're doing.
Well, and I think one of the reasons why it's not in the IoT courseware is from a Wi-Fi person's perspective, it's still just Wi-Fi. I mean,
yes.
you talk to it, it uses all the same Wi-Fi protocol. It just has a different PHY layer.
Yeah.
Unlike LoRaWAN, you have to go and learn LoRa or any of the...
Chirp. You got to learn chirp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is there anything else there at the conference that you thought was, new and highlighting you wanted to talk about?
When you talk about Dorothy, the one that she talked about that got me was 802.11 BP, which was the energy harvesting, ambient power communication energy harvesting. And she talked about the use case for having, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, she said that there was an antenna elements printed on cardboard that when the cardboard box came through, there was enough power harvested to activate that to read the code that was embedded in that cardboard box. So she talked about using it to do inventory scanning and everything else. And it was a circuit board. It was a circuit printed on cardboard that could chirp out the readings and was just enough power. But, it was this, I remember she said, this was like a pie in the sky idea for so long. And everyone's like, no, you can't broadcast enough power from Wi-Fi to activate a radio, just, harvesting it. And sure enough, they are. So that one was really cool to see.
I think too many people, though, hear the word energy harvesting and think you're going to power something else.
Like high power. This was just enough to activate a radio and have it chirp something out and then just go back to sleep.
And not very far. Yeah, one of the things is we talk about our APs and we feed them BT power now.
Yep.
But that's lots of wattage coming down the copper into an AP. But what comes out are we talk about like milliwatts, like a 1,000th of a watt, but we're putting in lots of hundreds of watts. And all the rest of that just goes to heat. Heat. That's why our APs are like a heat sink wrapped around some electronics.
That's right.
So
I love the way you describe that.
We're going to power anything with just that milliwatt to drive anything real, like recharging your phone or something, is not possible. But as Dorothy said, it's not recharging your phone. It's just barely enough to make something activate something really small.
Yeah, man. And she talked about, what was the one she said? Optimizing M2M energy efficiency in 802.11AH. The battery dependency of an 802.11AH sensor is significantly lowered by energy harvesting, which provide the sensor size and energy harvesting efficiency are sufficient. So it's got to be, it can't probably be the size of a dime. It has to be a little bit bigger to make sure they can harvest enough. But
it's got to have enough square inches worth of antenna to pull something down.
Yeah. But still, those are things I like to see, that it's like that this is something that no one could dream was possible. And here we are, 2024, and you see it and you go, oh yeah, we actually did that. I like to see innovation like that taking place. And then more importantly, I like to see the vendors that implement them and use them. And, I'm on a kick right now because HP just announced their new Aruba access points, their Wi-Fi 7 APs, and they've got 802.11az in there. And that's so cool because nobody else has that in there. And I think I love to see the people that go out and they're like, oh, we're going to get this strange, thing, and we're going to stick it on there and see if it takes. So kudos to anyone.
And the benefits there, I mean, for years, it's been a couple of years now that we had MC as our fine time measurement to get closer and closer location tracking. As we were talking before we started the recording, location if we could hit 10 meters, there was a time 10 meters of the Wi-Fi is as good as we can get. And now between MC and now AZ, we're getting, we might not be down to centimeter level, but we've got sub-meter level.
Yeah, they're saying foot with AZ, foot or less, and that's awesome. I mean, how awesome is that? So speaking of that, one of the things that I really enjoyed on the first day of Wi-Fi Now goes exactly to that, because when he talked about it, I was wondering to myself, how does that happen? And that was not Kevin, the gentleman from Intel who was there. I can't remember his name. The person from Intel talking about the Intel PC and about the AI PC and the innovations that Intel's going to be producing. And he talked about all the different things that they're using Wi-Fi for. And he talked about walking up to your computer and sitting down at your computer and having it automatically recognize and power up and turn on and authenticate you, not just based on your face or your thumbprint, but also based on your watch or your phone or another device that could help authenticate you. I was like, how is he getting down to the accuracy of sitting in front of his computer where it knows that your watch, that it sees your face and it validates your watch as your personal device and it authenticates you to turn on? I was like, what's this guy talking about? And sure enough, then I started digging into AZ and, Aruba talking about using it. I'm like, well, wait a minute. That's exactly how that goes in. But talking about what Intel is doing and, AI, right? It was impossible to escape the buzzword, even at Wi-Fi now. But talking about the way that it was being used at the PC level so that you don't have to use any of the other components. But side by side, one of the other parts I thought was great at Wi-Fi now was having MediaTek there, right? And having the people that were building the home routers saying, you know what, we can process all of the AI stuff on your home router so that you don't have to process it, heavy process on your computer, heavy process on your phone, don't have to go all the way to the cloud. The gateway is a perfect opportunity to do that. So having MediaTek there, along with Intel, those two chipset manufacturers there, I think was really, really cool. That's not something that you see at a lot of these conferences, is that, again, that residential side talking about what they're doing to make it better. You might see them at CES, but you don't see them at, Cisco Live, so having them there was
Systems was there talking about their sensing. And it kind of ties into what you're saying with Intel. You sit down, that they can tell that you entered the room. You're not a cat. You're not a dog. You're a human. That you're breathing. All of those things with just the Wi-Fi that's already in the room. And that was, to me, that was so great to see. I know at CES, one of the things I've seen that's been a trend over the last couple of years is the medical stuff and what they're doing with the medical industry and how they're using different sensors to do things. And about 3 years ago, I want to say, is when I first saw people popping up and they were taking these little hockey puck looking things and sticking them on the wall. And they're using 20, 40, and 60 gigahertz to monitor blood flow in your veins and to monitor your heartbeat, looking for arrhythmias, monitor your breathing, using RF to do it. So they're doing sensing at a very high level. Obviously there's huge channels, right? So they have to have this wide channel to have the visibility to see what's going on. You're not going to do it with a 2 megahertz channel, but moving that now into the Wi-Fi space. I remember seeing Wi-Fi used for sensing in some way, shape, or form. And I talked about this at WLPC, both in Prague and in Phoenix, the Keller cones on the, how they took these big letters and they stuck them on top of buckets and they put them on the other side of the wall. And based on the cones, the Keller cones are little things like the spirals that end up at the end of wingtips, how the RF spirals out at the end of edges and corners, how they could use it to sense that there was an object there and they could make out all these different letters that were like 1.5 feet tall. But not only doing that, but understanding who's there, when they're there, how they're there. And Keith had never thought about the implications to the security industry that this offers, using the existing chipsets. I mean, that's the part that blew my mind. They were like, we use the existing chipsets that you already have. The drivers just have to be loaded in and we can interpret that data. And I was like, what? It was awesome. Yeah, it's amazing. Well, one last one I want to talk about. It was unique. I met Artemis. She's started a company called LATYS. I met her last year at Wi-Fi Now conference, and she talked about it and it was kind of interesting. And it took me 6 months, a year to kind of absorb what her idea was. And I'll try to recreate it here. They did a couple demos there. She has a device that's a passive antenna, which just sounds really weird because it's actually powered, but it doesn't matter what you send it on with the input side. It takes whatever radio wave it comes in and it amplifies it and sends it out. Since it's just radio wave to radio wave, it's at the speed of light. So there's no delay. Unlike a Wi-Fi repeater that takes the entire frame in, rebuilds it, transmits out a new one, this takes the radio wave in and just sends it on. I saw a demo of this with a spectrum analyzer from Aronia where they could record and play back a direct recording. They could record on 2.4, play it back on 5 gig, because it's just a wave, and they just change the baseline. So the LATYS hardware is just one way only, and so if you wanted better communications, you might need 2 of them. But it takes any radio wave coming in, and it makes it louder going out the other side by 10 to 15 dB.
Isn't that crazy?
And think of all the places we could use these. Normally, when we need to cover like a little corner or behind an elevator or down a long hall in a warehouse, we put a directional antenna or an extra AP to give you the extra coverage. She's offering a solution that you just point it. So it's a repeater, but it just repeats whatever comes in, goes out. It doesn't matter if it was MIMO or not MIMO, because it's just every radio wave that comes in gets sent out the other side directionally. It's about a 60 degree on the output. On the input side, it's more of an omni. So just kind of a weird little thing. I think there could be a market for this idea of just a one-way RF amplifier. We've never seen anything like it before. And this is just one of those, hold this, stay around. Look at this place. It could be interesting when they come out and they have bigger announcements in the future.
Oh, yeah. And LATYS was great. And then right next to them on the little show floor was Aura Wireless, who I had never heard from either. And I wanted to schedule some time to talk to them and have a conversation, because I was absolutely skeptical about what this is. One of those things you see it and you go, okay, I got to take this home, and I got to put this out in the field and see what it does. They were talking about their new solution called Apogee, a configurable wireless radio propagation platform, and
that's a mouthful.
Yeah. I had to read it to remember what it said, right? So they talked about changing the antenna interface. That all they're doing is they're changing the antenna interface on any standard wireless device, and they're able to significantly increase the way that the propagation coming off of the antenna because of the way that they use. And I didn't know if the architecture necessarily was beamforming, or if it was what their radiation pattern was, or how it was being effective. It was beamforming, or if it was an array. I believe it was an array. But they're the ones that have those big cylindrical units sitting on their show floor. 40 antenna elements divided into 4 90-degree panels, allows configurations from omni to 90-degree directional radiation pattern in the antenna. It's asymmetrical reception gain for boosting signals received from faraway devices, and steep active filters for noise reduction. So that's what they claim can do. This makes me think of SkyPilot. Do you remember SkyPilot? And the way that they got around the FCC is they said, okay, we've got 9 antennas or 10 antennas built into this dome or this keg looking unit, but each one of them is individually licensed from the FCC, so we can provide 30 dBm on each one of them. So combined, if you're connecting 3 of them, well, you got 90. It's like, and I was like, I'm not sure that maths. But they're not around anymore. So
I think that's what surprised me at Wi-Fi Now conference. It was kind of more focused. It's a biz dev kind of place. It's where you go to make contacts, and there's more suits than I would see at a WPC or a Cisco Live.
Yeah. But
there was also some new and up and coming people who just said, we want to get in this industry. We have this cool product. Let's go talk about it.
Yeah. The guys from Infinite Cloud, man, so much fun. Such a great conversation with them, and they brought out a new product. The guy who brought it to market was like, here's a new product. I wanted to make one. I didn't like what was out in the market, and I figured that I could do it better, and I could jump into this market and add my own personal touch to it. So Infinite Cloud brought their A game. They brought their awesome logo. I love their logo. They brought their logo and their branding out. They brought some APs. They talked about their cloud interface and how they're doing it. They're based out of Bahrain, which is really cool. Like, I've never met a company that's based out of there. But you're right. From a biz dev perspective, it was interesting to see a couple of brands I had never heard of. Oh my God. And speaking of, Epitiro was there, which totally blew my mind, Keith, because, I know you remember when way back in the day, I remember seeing what Epitiro was doing, and they were working with Spirent to launch their Epitiro device in the US, and it was only for cell services, and it's a sensor, right? So it tells you it's a quality sensor. And I remember looking at that going, oh my God, this is going to change the industry. This is incredible. And then Spirent quit using them. They all but disappeared. And a company called Asymmetric popped up, which later became Cape Networks, which, I was a part of. Mm-hmm. And then that's the Aruba UXI sensor. And then NetBees popped up, and YBAT's out there. But Epitiro out of nowhere shows up at Wi-Fi Now, and I was like, "Oh my God, I haven't seen you guys in 15 years. What are you doing here?" I don't know if you got a chance to talk to them or not. I'm going to have them on my Waves podcast because I love what they were doing with their client devices and with their phone application and the way that it ties in their cloud dashboard. So again, from that biz dev perspective, if they would have been at CES, it would have been lost. If they would have been at WLPC, it would have been great to have them nerding out with us. But you're not going to find them at Cisco Live or Atmosphere or at any of these shows. So to see them there was like very, very sweet. So I'm so glad to see Epitiro's live.
I do. For WLPC, I love that there's no vendors, that there's no vendor booths, that people can't buy their way in to do things. And it's good for the attendees of WLPC. We love it. That's why we keep coming back. But there is a need for a show like Wi-Fi Now, for a chance for the vendors to come out and show off what they've got.
Absolutely. I just talked to Tom Carpenter about that. Yeah. I said, look, you guys added balance to the force, man. I said, when CWNP was doing their show, it was like, you can totally buy your way into that show, and there's vendor booths and this and that. I was like, and it offset it because, and I was going to pose this question to you, is as a wireless professional, and not even that, as just a wireless nerd, someone like me who just got my new Baofeng radio, the new one that everyone's talking about. I just got mine in the mail today. I'm so stoked. $26, man. Their new one is awesome. But as someone who does things like that, there aren't very many places that we can go to really geek out anymore because so many of the conferences, it seemed like, have gone, the good quality content is at HP Discover. It's at Cisco Live. It's at these vendor-driven conferences where, you get to see your friends and you get to see the vendors, but there's that vendor twist on it. I don't know where to go anymore. WLPC is, and that's just a different conference. So I don't feel like it even fits in this category. But where can someone go to have that experience, to see the vendors with the booths doing the things that they do, unless you're going to go to Infocom or NAB or, where do you go to see that?
We used to go to, it was Networld, and that was Networld Interrupt, and that was Interrupt alone.
Networld?
And Interrupt just kind of, we
faded away
before Interrupts, and I think we've kind of lost that. Part of it is because of the web. There was a time where I went to Comdex because it was the only place to go and meet people.
That's right.
So
that was the big daddy of all of them.
It was good for us to meet and have this discussion today about Wi-Fi Now's World Congress because it's kind of old school and it still gives you a reason to go and meet and touch people in the vendor booth and see new things you hadn't seen before.
Yeah, or see I saw people that I haven't seen in 20 years, 25 years that showed up. So that was really good to see, man. Overall, it was a good show. I was taken aback at the beginning because I was like, why are they talking about all this residential stuff? But then I learned to appreciate it. And Klaus and his team just always do a phenomenal job. Ina and Klaus and the whole team over there, they're always nice. They always take care of everybody. The food was awesome. We had cookies and chocolate and, chocolate chip cookies and chocolate milk. That was a hell of a break. But it was really good. It said Sarasota, as strange as it was to meet you, I'm glad that I did. So I'm glad that Klaus brought us together there. I'm definitely looking forward to the next one. I'll say that much.
Well, it sounds good. Drew, thanks for your time today. You've been listening to another episode of Heavy Wireless, part of the Packet Pushers Podcast Network, and we'd be glad to have you join us in the next episode coming in just 2 weeks. Thank you.